The bar was loud. Marines off duty, beer flowing, laughter bouncing off the walls. In the corner sat an old man in a wheelchair, quiet, calm, just sipping his whiskey. Most didn't notice him, until one loud recruit did. "Hey, Grandpa," the kid laughed. "You ever even serve or just wear the hat for discounts?" A few chuckles rolled through the room. The old man didn't flinch. He just looked up, steady eyes, voice low. "You could say I did my time, son." The Marine smirked. "Yeah? Then what was your call sign?" The old man set his glass down. No anger, no pride. Just two words. "Reaper 1. The laughter stopped. Every head turned. Because that name wasn't a story, it was a warning. A call sign whispered through generations of Marines. The man who went dark in Fallujah and never came back. Until now. And within minutes, the man who mocked him would be calling his commander. Because he just realized who he was talking to. If you respect our veterans, if you believe real heroes walk among us every day, hit that subscribe button and tell us where you're watching from. Because tonight, you're about to meet one. The clock above the bar ticked softly beneath the buzz of neon lights. The place was half full, the kind of late-night crowd that gathered near Camp Pendleton every Friday. Laughter echoed from one side of the room, where a group of young Marines in their 20s were drinking hard and bragging harder. The air smelled of beer, grease, and salt from the ocean. At the far end of the counter sat an old man in a wheelchair. His back was straight, his white hair trimmed close, his weathered hands wrapped around a half-empty glass of whiskey. The bartender, a broad-shouldered man named Eddie, refilled his glass without asking. "Long night. Jack?" he asked quietly. Jack Reynolds gave a small shrug. "Long life." He said it without bitterness, just truth. His voice was steady, low, the kind that carried weight even when spoken softly. The Marines at the other end didn't notice him yet. They were too busy laughing, pounding the table, shouting about deployments and victories that still smelled of youth and adrenaline. Eddie watched them from behind the counter. "They remind you of anyone?" Jack smiled faintly. "All of us, before we knew what it cost." That line hung in the air just long enough for the door to swing open. Another burst of noise rolled in with two more Marines joining their friends. Louder, cockier, their confidence unshakable. One of them, a tall corporal with a square jaw and an undercut, noticed Jack's wheelchair first. He elbowed his buddy. "Look, boys, Grandpa came for happy hour." Laughter erupted. Jack didn't react. He just took a sip of his whiskey, eyes still on the TV above the bar. The corporal grinned wider, emboldened. "Hey, sir, you lose that license or just the legs?" Eddie froze mid-pour. The bar went quieter, the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Jack didn't even look at them. "Easy, Corporal," Eddie warned. "It's fine," Jack said, his tone calm but sharp enough to stop the bartender mid-step. He finally turned his head, meeting the Marine's smirk with a look that didn't need to raise its voice. "Son, the last man who spoke to me like that is buried in Arlington." That sentence shifted the air instantly. One of the younger Marines coughed awkwardly, looking away. But the corporal wasn't ready to back down. He leaned against the bar, forcing a grin. "All right, tough guy. You a vet?" Jack's eyes drifted down to his glass. "Once." "Once?" the Marine laughed. "Come on, every guy in this town says that. What were you, supply? Logistics? Cook?" Eddie muttered under his breath. "You should stop now, son." But he didn't. He reached over, tapping the side of Jack's wheelchair. "You don't look like no grunt to me, old man." Jack's jaw tightened slightly. For a brief second, something dangerous flickered behind his calm eyes. Not anger, not pride, just memory. "I looked worse when it happened," he said quietly. "When what happened?" the corporal pressed. Jack lifted his glass, took one more sip, and set it down with deliberate precision. Then he turned fully, his wheelchair squeaking slightly as he faced them. "Son," he said, "you ever hear of a call sign?" The corporal blinked. "A call sign?" "Sure. Every Marine gets one eventually." Jack nodded. "Mine was Reaper 1. The laughter stopped. Completely. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. One of the older Marines at the table, a sergeant with a scar running down his cheek, slowly lowered his beer. His eyes widened. "Reaper 1? He repeated softly. The corporal frowned, confused. What? You know him? The sergeant's voice dropped to a whisper. Everyone knows the story. Operation Stone Viper. They said Reaper 1 wiped out a full insurgent line alone when the team got pinned. The whole squad made it home but one. He looked at Jack, his face pale. Sir, that was 23 years ago. Jack didn't answer. The corporal forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow now. Come on, that's a myth. Some old ghost story from the Corps. The sergeant shook his head slowly. Not a myth. They said the man disappeared after the op. Never confirmed KIA, never came home. Eddie finally spoke, his tone reverent. He didn't disappear. He just stopped talking about it. Every eye in the bar turned toward the wheelchair. The only sound was the faint buzz of the old neon sign in the window. The corporal swallowed hard, suddenly unsure what to do with his hands. So you're saying you're that guy? The Reaper 1? Jack's gaze was distant now, as if looking through them instead of at them. Used to be, he said. Used to be, another Marine whispered. Sir, they said you died, Jack finished quietly. Yeah, I heard. A single drop of whiskey slid down the side of his glass, tracing the reflection of the dim bar lights. The corporal finally muttered, Then why the hell are you here? Jack's lips curved slightly. A tired ghost of a smile. Because ghosts get thirsty too. That line hit harder than any punch could have. The sergeant stood up slowly and saluted. The kind of instinct you don't think about, you just do. The other Marines followed hesitantly, a few lowering their heads in respect. Eddie's voice was low, almost reverent. Easy, boys, you're standing in front of the reason half of you ever made it home. The corporal's throat worked as he swallowed. Sir, I didn't mean... Jack raised a hand, stopping him. You didn't know. Most don't. He turned back to the bar, rolling his glass between his hands. The muscles in his jaw twitched once, just barely. Most never will. The silence stretched long and heavy until the door at the back of the bar creaked open. Everyone turned. A tall man in a Marine dress uniform stepped in, his polished shoes echoing against the wooden floor. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes locked straight on Jack. Eddie's whisper barely carried. Oh, hell, that's General Harris. The general took one slow step forward. Reaper 1, he said, voice gravel low. Jack's hand froze halfway to his drink. Sir, Harris continued, his tone weighted with something deeper than rank. We need to talk. The bar was still as a tomb, and the corporal, the same kid who'd mocked the man minutes ago, whispered the only words he could find. What the hell did we just walk into? The air inside O'Malley's was heavy, thick with silence, tension, and the faint smell of spilled beer. Nobody spoke. Even the jukebox had gone quiet. General Harris stood by the door, rainwater glistening on his uniform. His eyes didn't leave the old man in the wheelchair. Jack Reynolds, Reaper 1. The young Marines who minutes ago had been loud and cocky now sat frozen in their seats. The corporal who had mocked him earlier stared at the floor, pale and ashamed. Everyone out, Harris said. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Marines moved fast when a general gave an order. Even off duty, chairs scraped the floor, boots echoed toward the exit, and soon it was just Harris, Jack, and Eddie behind the bar. Harris walked slowly toward him, boots steady on the old wood. You're supposed to be dead, he said quietly. Jack didn't look up. I've heard that before. You vanished after Stone Viper, Harris continued, his tone clipped, professional. But there was something underneath it, something almost human. No reports, no body, just a black file and a flag folded for a widow who never saw a casket. Jack's eyes flicked toward the empty whiskey glass. Maybe that's how it was meant to stay. Not anymore, Harris said, his voice tightening. You showing your face here? You have no idea what you just stirred up. Eddie leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He came here to drink, not start a war. Harris glanced at him briefly, then back at Jack. You think you can just disappear for 2 decades and walk into a bar wearing your ghost like it's nothing? Command's going to see this. They already have. Jack's jaw tightened. I didn't come here to make headlines. Then why? Harris pressed. Why now? Jack took a breath, his voice rough. Because I'm tired of pretending I died when I didn't. The general paused, studying him, and for the first time some of the hardness in his face cracked. You should have stayed dead, Jack. You don't know what's coming if they find out. Jack's eyes lifted then, steady and sharp. They already have. The words landed heavy. Harris froze for a moment, realizing the weight behind them. Outside, thunder rolled. Eddie frowned. General, what's this all about? What's Stone Viper? People whisper about it, but no one ever says what happened. Harris didn't answer right away. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from Jack. It was 2002, he said finally. Deep desert, northern Iraq. Small recon unit. Mission was simple. Extract 2 hostages before a hostile faction moved them across the border. Jack's voice cut in quietly. Intel was wrong. There weren't 12 hostiles. There were over 100. Harris nodded. You were pinned. Reinforcements couldn't get through. We lost contact. Everyone thought you were gone. Eddie swallowed hard. And you weren't? Jack shook his head. I made it out. Barely. Brought the hostages with me. But by the time I reached the checkpoint, Command had already declared the mission closed. My team listed as KIA. The extraction plane was gone. Harris leaned forward, his voice lower now. And instead of coming back, you disappeared. Jack looked down at his scarred hands. There wasn't anything to come back to. The silence that followed was suffocating, the kind of quiet that felt like confession. Eddie finally whispered, They called you a legend. Jack's lips twisted into a humorless smile. Legends don't have nightmares. Outside, rain began to fall harder, tapping against the windows like fingertips. Harris's tone softened, but his eyes stayed sharp. You can't stay here, Jack. Once Command confirms your identity, they'll send someone. You're not a free man anymore. Jack raised an eyebrow. I haven't been for a long time. You don't understand, Harris said. They buried your file for a reason. You were part of a classified task force, one that didn't officially exist. If the wrong people find out you're alive, it's not just your life on the line. Jack chuckled, low and tired. You think I care about my life? I lost that in the desert. The general slammed his hand on the table, startling Eddie. Don't do that, he snapped. Don't act like what you did means nothing. Jack didn't flinch. Then tell me what it meant, because I still wake up hearing their voices. For a moment, Harris didn't speak. The storm outside roared louder, filling the silence between them. You weren't supposed to survive, he said at last. You were supposed to die with your team. It made the mission cleaner, simpler. Jack's voice turned sharp. Cleaner? We were human beings, not ink on a report. Harris exhaled slowly. You were heroes, but heroes complicate politics, so Command erased you. Eddie stepped forward, anger flickering in his eyes. So you're telling me this man saved people, survived hell, and your government pretended he didn't exist? Harris didn't deny it. It's not that simple. Jack's tone cut through the noise. It's always that simple. Men like me fight. Men like him write the story. The general's jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his pocket and slid a small, sealed envelope across the table. They'll come looking for you. When they do, take this and run. It's not safe anymore. Jack didn't touch it. I stopped running the day I couldn't walk. Harris stood, straightening his uniform. Then you'd better be ready for what comes next. What's that? Jack asked quietly. People trying to make sure ghosts stay buried. The general turned to leave, pausing at the door. You were the best Marine I ever knew, Jack. Don't make me regret letting you live twice. Then he walked out into the storm, his figure swallowed by the rain. For a long time, the only sound was the rhythmic tapping on the window and the low hum of the bar lights. Eddie finally broke the silence. You really think he'll come back? Jack looked down at the untouched envelope. No, he said softly. He won't have to. Eddie frowned. What do you mean? Jack's eyes lifted, distant and calm. Because they're already here. At that exact moment, headlights flashed through the rain. 3 black SUVs sliding to a stop outside O'Malley's, engines still running. Eddie moved toward the window. Jack, who are they? Jack didn't answer. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old set of worn Marine dog tags, their edges dulled from years of wear. He set them gently on the bar counter. "Men who think I owe them my silence," he said. The first SUV door opened. Shadows stepped out, moving in sync. Suits, earpieces, black umbrellas against the storm. Jack rolled his wheelchair back slightly, eyes steady on the door. "Eddie," he said quietly, "lock the back door." "Why?" "Because this time," Jack murmured, "I'm not running." The front door creaked open. Rain dripped from the shoulders of the man who entered. Tall, expressionless, holding a file marked "Classified." He spoke only one line, calm and cold. "Reaper 1, you've been recalled." The sound of thunder rolled overhead as the door shut behind him, and somewhere deep inside Jack's tired eyes, a spark, long buried, began to burn again. He turned his chair slightly, facing the stranger. "Then I guess it's time," he said, voice steady, "to finish what they started." The man's eyes narrowed. "You won't survive it." Jack smiled faintly. "That's what they said the first time." Lightning flashed and the power flickered. When it came back on, the file lay open on the bar. Page 1 read only 2 words, "Operation Reaper's Ghost," and the old Marine whispered under his breath, "Guess the Corps still remembers." Outside, more doors opened, more shadows stepped into the rain, and in that moment, the bar that had been his refuge became a battlefield waiting to happen. The front windows shook as a figure stepped from the last SUV, a woman in uniform, her face hidden under the hood. But Jack knew that stance. He froze, because 23 years ago she was supposed to be dead too. The rain outside O'Malley's fell harder now, hammering against the roof like a warning. Inside, the room was dim and tense, the smell of damp wood and whiskey mixing with fear. Jack Reynolds sat motionless in his wheelchair, facing the door. His old Marine jacket clung to him, soaked from the earlier storm. Eddie stood behind the bar, his hand trembling slightly as he poured another drink he wasn't sure anyone would touch. The woman who stepped out of the rain removed her hood slowly. Her face was older now, worn by time and pain, but those eyes were unmistakable. "Lieutenant Grace Carter," Jack said quietly. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again." Grace's lips curved faintly. "Neither did I." The agent who'd entered before her turned sharply. "You two know each other?" Grace didn't answer. She just looked at Jack. Really looked, as if seeing a ghost she wasn't ready to believe in. "We were on the same unit," she said finally. "Stone Viper." Eddie froze. "The same mission you said was a death trap," Jack finished for him. "Yeah, she didn't make it out either." The agent frowned. "Then why is she standing here?" Grace's voice came out low. "Because I did what command told me to. I disappeared." Jack's jaw clenched. "You mean they bought your silence?" Grace took a cautious step forward. "You think I had a choice?" He looked up at her sharply. "We all had choices." For a moment, their eyes locked. Two soldiers bound by the same scars, carrying different versions of the same lie. The agent cut in impatiently. "Enough reunion talk. We're here under direct orders. Command wants Reynolds in custody. He's breached national security by resurfacing." Eddie slammed his rag on the counter. "He's not some fugitive. He's a Marine." The agent turned toward him. "Not anymore." Jack's voice stopped them cold. "He's right." The room fell quiet again. "I'm not a Marine anymore," Jack continued softly. "I'm just a name they buried under the sand." Grace hesitated. There was something in his voice she hadn't heard in decades. The same calm he had before everything went wrong in the desert. "Jack," she said quietly, "if you come with us, I can make sure you're protected." He gave a dry laugh. "Protected? You mean locked away in some off-the-books bunker until I die for real this time?" Grace didn't respond. Eddie's voice cracked the silence. "Why can't you just leave him alone? He's done nothing wrong." The agent glared. "He broke protocol the second he showed up alive." Jack chuckled bitterly. "Funny. I didn't realize existing was a crime." "Existing with that call sign is," Grace said softly. "Reaper 1 means something to people, Jack. It's not just history. It's classified mythology." Jack's tone hardened. "Then maybe it's time they remembered what those myths cost." Grace's composure wavered. You think I don't remember? I buried 16 of our brothers because of that mission. His eyes darkened. And I carried their dog tags through 40 miles of hell to bring them home. The agent raised his voice. Enough! Both of you! But neither of them looked away. Outside, thunder cracked again, shaking the walls. The lights flickered. Eddie muttered, "This place ain't built for this kind of storm." Grace turned toward the agent. "Give us a moment." He hesitated. "Captain Walsh said—" "I outrank Walsh," Grace said coldly. That ended it. The man stepped outside, muttering into his radio. Now it was just them. The bartender, the ghost, and the soldier who'd lived too long with secrets. Grace leaned against the counter. "I should have died that day," she said quietly. "They left me bleeding in the compound. You dragged me out." Jack's eyes flickered. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." "Then you remember what I told you before we split." Grace nodded. "You said if we made it out alive, we'd tell the truth." "And you didn't," he said. "I couldn't," she replied, her voice breaking for the first time. "They threatened my family, Jack. My sister, my father. I didn't have your luxury of dying on paper." Jack's jaw loosened. He wanted to hate her, but he couldn't. The war had broken too many promises to count. Eddie stepped forward, voice shaking. "So what now? You two just going to hand him over? Pretend none of this ever happened?" Grace didn't answer right away. "If I don't, they'll send someone worse. Someone who doesn't care if he's breathing when they take him in." Jack took a deep breath. "Then let them come." Grace's eyes widened. "You don't understand." "Oh, I do," he said. "You think this is the first time they've tried to bury me?" A sharp knock hit the door. The agent outside spoke through the glass. "Captain Carter, we have confirmation from command. They're escalating." Her heart sank. "Escalating how?" "Drones are in the air. They want a live trace on the target." Eddie's voice rose. "Drones? For one old man in a wheelchair?" Jack smiled grimly. "Guess they still think I'm dangerous." Grace turned toward him. "You need to move. Now. There's a safe house on the outskirts. Old marine property. No traceable comms. We can get there before—" A sharp whine cut through the air outside. High-pitched, mechanical, unmistakable. "They're already here," Jack said. Grace cursed under her breath, sprinting to the window. The reflection of red targeting lights glowed faintly through the rain. Eddie ducked behind the bar. "You gotta be kidding me." Jack turned his chair toward the back exit. "There's a maintenance tunnel behind the storage room. It runs under the alley." Grace hesitated. "You sure you can still move like you used to?" He gave a dry grin. "Who said I stopped?" She helped him toward the back, pushing his chair faster than the wheels liked. The floorboards creaked, lights flickering as the power fluctuated again. Outside, the hum grew louder, a sound like hornets in a thunderstorm. Grace yanked open the door to the back hallway. "Go, Jack!" But Jack stopped halfway, turning toward her. "You still trust me?" She met his gaze. "I never stopped." The words hit him harder than the storm outside. They pushed through the narrow hall, water dripping from the ceiling. Eddie followed, muttering prayers under his breath. As they reached the end, Jack glanced back. At the bar, the empty glasses, the ghosts that would never quite leave him. For a second, he almost turned back. But then the ceiling shook. The window shattered. A red beam cut across the floor where he'd been seconds earlier. Grace yelled, "Move!" Jack gritted his teeth as the tunnel door swung open. "Where does this lead?" she shouted over the noise. "Somewhere they can't follow," he said. They slipped inside, closing the hatch, just as another explosion rattled the walls. Darkness swallowed them. The sound of rain faded, replaced by the drip of underground water and the echo of boots in a narrow tunnel. Grace caught her breath, her voice barely a whisper. "What now?" Jack looked ahead into the dark. "Now," he said quietly, "we remind them why they were afraid of ghosts in the first place." From far above, through the cracks of the storm, came the sound of approaching helicopters, and in the shadows below, the old Marine's eyes burned with the same fire he'd left on that battlefield decades ago. Grace turned to him, her voice unsteady. "Jack, what's down there?" He didn't answer. He just smiled faintly. Something we left behind, he said. And as the tunnel lights flickered back to life, the glow illuminated a row of old metal cases, each stamped with a single word: Reaper. The storm had slowed to a drizzle when Jack Reynolds rolled out of O'Malley's pub. The street glistened beneath the amber streetlights, puddles reflecting the faint red glow of traffic lights changing at the corner. The wheels of his chair hissed against wet asphalt. He didn't hurry. Men like him stopped running years ago. Behind him, Grace jogged to catch up, rain matting her hair to her forehead. "Jack, where are you going?" "Nowhere special," he said softly. "Just tired of hiding in plain sight." The low rumble of engines broke through the quiet. Black SUVs moved slowly down the block, headlights cutting through the mist like searchlights. They didn't need sirens. Their presence alone said everything. Grace glanced at him, panic flickering in her eyes. "They found us." Jack gave a faint, tired smile. "Took them long enough." She stepped in front of him. "You can't just sit there." "I've been sitting for years, kid," he said. "Doesn't mean I'm powerless." The SUVs stopped 30 feet away. Doors opened in perfect unison. 6 men stepped out. Dark suits, hard eyes, no insignia. They didn't have to announce who they were. Jack knew that look. Government cleanup crew. One of them called out, "Jack Reynolds, United States Marine Corps. Call sign, Reaper 1. The title hung in the air like thunder. "You broke operational silence," and the man continued. "Command wants you to come quietly." Jack chuckled under his breath. "Funny thing, son. Quiet's how they erased me in the first place." The lead agent's jaw tightened. "You know what'll happen if you resist." "I'm not resisting," Jack said. "I'm remembering." Grace moved closer to his side. "You're not doing this alone." He looked up at her, eyes soft despite the steel in his voice. "Grace, this isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," she said. "You taught me what honor looks like. I'm not letting them take you like this." Before either could speak again, the agents advanced. Grace drew her sidearm instinctively. Jack reached over, pressing his hand gently over hers. "No guns," he whispered. "Not tonight." The agent stopped 5 feet away. The leader's voice lowered. "Sir, you served your country. Let us take it from here." Jack's laugh was hollow. "You can't take what's already gone." He wheeled forward, closer, until he could see the rain streaking down the man's face. "You think this chair makes me weak? You think erasing a file makes a ghost disappear?" He leaned forward, his voice a low growl. "Son, I was the file." The agent faltered, just slightly. Jack continued, his tone now calm but heavy. "You tell your bosses the truth. The Reaper program didn't fail because we broke. It failed because we survived." Lightning flashed. Thunder rolled. And for a brief moment, even the men sent to capture him hesitated. Grace stepped closer, whispering, "Jack, we have to move." He didn't look at her. "No, Grace. You move. Someone's got to walk away from this with the truth." She shook her head, tears forming. "Please, don't do this." He gave a faint smile, the kind that carried both pride and peace. "Semper Fi, kid." Then he turned back to the agents, straightening as much as his damaged body allowed. "Do what you came to do, but know this. Every Marine dies twice. Once when the bullet hits, and once when the world forgets his name." Rain poured harder. The agents froze. And in that stillness, the truth hung heavier than any weapon. Jack raised his hand to his temple in one last salute, steady, unwavering. The man across from him, hardened by decades of orders, found his own hand rising in return. No command, no resistance, just respect. Moments later, the SUVs rolled away into the storm, mission unspoken, target untouched. Grace rushed forward. "Jack, what just happened?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes you don't win by fighting. You win by reminding them you were never defeated." She knelt beside him, hands trembling. "So what now?" "Now," he said, eyes lifting toward the dawn breaking through the clouds. "We go home." The next morning, the news never mentioned it. No reports, no leaks. Just another night in a quiet Virginia town, but in a forgotten database somewhere, one line had changed. Status: Reaper 1, presumed at peace. Grace wheeled him to the pier where the ocean met the horizon. The wind carried the smell of salt and memory. She handed him a cup of coffee. He held it with shaking hands, staring out at the rising sun. Do you ever miss it? She asked. Jack's eyes softened. Every day. But missing it reminds me I survived it. She smiled. You think they'll ever tell your story? He took a long sip, then looked at her. Doesn't matter, you're telling it right now. Grace swallowed hard. You really think anyone will listen? Jack chuckled quietly. If they still believe in heroes, they'll listen. A long silence followed, broken only by the sea. Then Grace's voice cracked, small but fierce. Jack, thank you. For not giving up, for showing me what strength really looks like. He nodded slowly. Strength isn't standing tall, Grace. It's staying upright when the world's already knocked you down. She smiled through tears. You sure you don't want me to tell the world who you were? Jack's eyes glinted in the morning light. Don't tell them who I was. Tell them who I became. She nodded. And who's that? A man finally at peace. The camera faded as they sat side by side. A Marine and a friend, the tide washing over their reflections. Then Grace's voice broke the silence one last time. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Real heroes don't fade. They live through the people who remember them. So please subscribe, share this story, keep their memory alive. Because peace isn't the end of a soldier's story. It's the victory they earn. The waves crashed softly in the background. And for the first time since the war, Jack Reynolds smiled.